Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we call Spoilerin time. Now, on Cordkillers, our other show, we talk about how to watch what you want, when you want, where you want, whenever you want. This is where we do it. We've watched what we wanted. We watched when we wanted, on whatever device we wanted, and now we're going to talk about it. Brian Brushwood is joining me. I'm Tom Merritt.
Heck yeah, but before we begin any of that, we have to do our first ever Winter Movie Draft Report! 7 days ago.
You missed it. I just ran around the entire room.
Yeah, I believe you. 7 days ago, we did our winter movie draft. We had 6 competitors: Christy Cates, Brian Brushwood, Justin Robert Young, Daily Tech News Show team, consisting of both Tom and Jenny, Mikey Newman, and Malongo AE. Curiouser. How did you feel? Most people seem to feel like you and I came out the best in the picks, right?
Yeah, I guess. I think that's probably true. I go back and forth. Some days I feel like, man, I got Star Wars Rogue One. And I also have Trolls. How can I lose? And then other days, I look at Brian's lineup of 15 movies, and I say, why didn't people bid?
Yeah, dude, I played the people and not the movies because I didn't have the time to research as much as I wanted. So I just assumed that everybody had their favorites and they were holding back. So I just tried to buy anything cheap, and I think I got a few big ones. Arrival seems like it'll be pretty good, but I got Arrival, Sing, Gold, Hidden Figures, The Founder, Triple X, The Return of Xander Cage, 50 Shades Darker, John Wick, Chapter 2, and Logan. I don't know, man. I'm seeing maybe 3 $150 million movies in there, and the rest all together, I'm picturing coming close to 550, maybe 600 million, but just Rogue One alone is going to make 300 or 400 million.
Well, that's the thing. I have Resident Evil, the final chapter. I have Kidnap. Those don't matter. Yeah. Those are rounding errors. I have Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, and I have Trolls. And really, I think for me, it's going to come down to Trolls. Because yours are going to average out. The way that I almost won the summer was buying up a bunch of movies for cheap and knowing that some of them would overperform and some of them would underperform. And it almost worked.
Right.
And, in fact, if we had different rules, it would have. But I think this year you are going to be even better at that game because you have more movies. Because I was playing the personal game too. I thought, okay, now that I've done this Costco strategy for 2 seasons, people are going to catch on, and they're going to do that too. So I'm going to go all in on Rogue One, and if I can get it, then I should be able to win. My strategy was only get Rogue One. I was willing to go up to 100.
You didn't expect to end up with 4 movies.
I got it for 76, and I thought, I have won this. I have won this movie draft with 76 because all I need, I got Trolls. I'm like, that's all I need. And then people didn't do the strategy. No one contested Brian on the Costco strategy.
Well, and that's what you figured.
You just kept sucking in bargains.
If there was anybody else trying to hoover up the leavings on the bottom of the floor, then I think it would have been in trouble. And I got to tell you, I think it's Malongo that dropped the ball because he ended up with Mona, Office Christmas Party, and Passengers. And that's it.
Yeah. Passengers could overperform. Moana's going to do very well, but I hate to say it, that's not enough. And he left $25 on the table. Christy Cates also left $24 on the table. She has the first movie, though. If you are wondering how we got going, Jack Reacher never reached back. 22,872,490.
That got a giggle out of Bryce. So real quick, we should point out that at the Chatrealm League, it took us a little bit of a little bit of time to set up the form. So even though the first movie is out, you can right now head on over to draft.diamondclub.tv/form, and you can, at the market rates set by the 6 of us in our thing, spend your own $100, and you can possibly win the Movie Draft Chatrealm League all by yourself.
And hey, you know what? Apologies for being late a week. Part of it was us getting last-minute preparations together to have the draft at all. And then this whole Diamond Club part of the draft is done by people who are just pitching in on their own. So one person got called away for a very good reason, and that meant other people had to kind of pick up the slack, and they did. It just took a week to get it going. So don't be upset. Just get in there and fill out your form.
Yeah, dude, hop right in there.
T2T2 rebuilt the form from scratch.
So
we've extended the date to Friday, October 28th. So draft.diamondclub.tv/form to get in on it. You've still got some time.
All right.
Exciting.
Let's start off by spoiling episode 4 of season 1 of Westworld. We got a couple of emails to kick us off too. Should we start with the short one first? Because I think the main majority of our discussion could be Clyde's email.
Sure.
Actually.
No, I agree.
Nathan says, I'm enjoying Westworld and your discussions. I enjoy all the ethical ideas it brings up. I was thinking that given how advanced the human AI is, the animal AI probably matches real life. So to me, it seems like animal cruelty to create horses and dogs and other highly intelligent animals for the purpose of possibly being killed for guest entertainment. Also, I assume the hardware is similar to the human host, so I wonder if what is happening to the human host could cause the animals to gain consciousness as well. Just curious if you guys had thought about it from the animal perspective.
That's an interesting twist on the whole, Turing test dilemma, because the Turing test basically says if you can have a conversation with a robot and you can't tell the difference between the robot and a human, for all intents and purposes, you have created an actual conscious being. And we can hear that, and yet that's one thing the show seems to be trying to make clear is that on first blush they look very, very human, but Anthony Hopkins keeps reminding us they're just machines. They're just doing pre-programmed things, and we're the ones who write the programs in order to make them simulate stuff. Which, but when you lower the bar from human consciousness to animal consciousness, I think that does put an interesting twist on the cruelty thing, because basically, I don't think it's a stretch to say that a fly is not as conscious as a human being is in real life. And so, and that the standard to create a true artificial intelligence that matches the consciousness level of a fly or of a pig or of a horse or of a goat or whatever, is a bar that's lower than humans, especially given that this whole show looks like it's going to really be about what is and is not humanity. In the same vein that Battlestar Galactica did, I don't know. That does kind of short circuit that whole discussion. It's like, well, we know for a fact that this robot horse is as conscious as a real horse, and it's definitely getting shot to hell over and over and over again.
Well, okay. So I'm just going to try to argue against that just for the hell of it, because I agree with most of that. And I think it's a really great point to say, like, hey, if you wouldn't shoot a dog, why would you shoot a robot dog that is as good as a dog as far as consciousness goes? But you could, and they don't make this clear, but you could theoretically make a dog that isn't conscious. You could make a dog that is mimicking dog-like behavior, because if androids cannot have consciousness but be close enough to fool us, even today, right? You can have animatronics. They're like, wow, that's so real, but they're not conscious. Then you could make the animals in the park just move very fluidically, but not have any kind of like cognitive behavior at all.
Or maybe even have, let's say there is some kind of version of proto-consciousness or whatever, and then at the moment of terror and pain or whatever, shield the conscious part of the brain from that experience, where it just locks it off, like in a humanity kind of thing, where it's like,
that's
because
what they're doing with the androids too.
Maybe, right? Maybe in that moment when they're being, slaughtered or whatever, they go to a happy place on the inside consciousness part while the body does the screaming and writhing and all that stuff. I don't know, but I mean, the good news is this place doesn't exist, so let's just keep that in mind.
Clyde wrote in with 3 questions answered for us. Thank you for rewatching the episodes. He said I had to keep watching because I kept falling asleep. That's a topic for another day. Number 1, do they have home lives outside of the park? He points out that Lee, the writer, approaches Teresa, the ops manager, while she's smoking and says, how long until you rotate home, indicating they don't always work or live at that facility.
So he said that he thinks of something akin to military deployment overseas, which the moment he pointed that out, I thought that was a very good point. I had missed that. He also says, on the question of why was Dolores upgraded, there you go, while others were simply repaired or retired, it was established that Dolores is the park's most popular host, and she experiences a lot of abuse requiring extensive repairs. It only makes sense that she would receive upgrades over time as part of those repairs, much like putting a modern braking system on an antique classic car that's your daily driver.
See, I didn't catch that she is the park's most popular host. That definitely explains a lot. Although you could also make the argument, again, just to make the argument, that if she gets so much abuse, why wouldn't you have 3 or 4 of her? So you could just keep rotating a new one in.
Yeah. And finally, on the question of is the Man in Black on a different timeline, we talked about the theory that William is a young version of the Man in Black, possibly. He says no. Around the time he scalped the host looking for the maze, one of the red shirts is viewing him on a tablet and asks, should we do something about this guy? To which the response is no, he could do whatever he wants. There was an emphasis on he, indicating the Man in Black is special, not a normal visitor, which we only saw doubled down on in this current episode. To me, the one moment that I loved the most out of this entire most recent episode was when somebody tried to go to the Man in Black and thank him for what he's done with his foundation and how it helped his cousin. And he goes like, shut the F up. I'm on vacation. Like, indicating that this is a prominent, this kills my theory. Like, I was convinced that he's like a middle management accountant who just spends all his time playing this game over and over again. But it's clear he's a man of wealth and power and prestige in the outside world, known for what appears to be a philanthropic work.
This is Lord British, right?
Oh, like, I don't want to indicate that my friend Richard Garriott likes to go around raping people.
No, I'm not.
Fantasy
I'm saying,
land.
though, this is someone who loves to play games and has the means to do so should he want to. Whereas Richard Garriott said, I actually design games, so I'm going to take my wealth and I'm going to go into space. This guy says, I run a charitable foundation, so I'm going to take my means and just go play a video game because it relaxes me to be an evil guy. And that makes sense. Really good guy on the outside, potentially, because of this charitable implication. So he wants to get away from it all and be free to be a really bad guy where it doesn't matter because he's not actually hurting any people.
Yeah. So I feel bad that I haven't bothered to learn her name. But the madam at the brothel,
Maeve
is her name. Okay, so Maeve, how about that moment when she scribbles the spaceman stick figure and goes to hide it and discovers the stash of all the times she's done it before? That was amazing writing. I loved it. I like the fact that it's baked into the idea of the Native American populace. It's their totem or one of their spirits or whatever. I love the conspiracy that she enters where, when it's like stab me and pull this bullet out and it's clear something's messed up. And am I remembering right? Did she have the bandit just shoot her in the head afterwards? Like, screw it. We're caught.
Oh, no, it was the sheriff outside just started shooting through the door and she's like, don't bother running away. Let's just get shot.
Oh, that's right. They started making out.
Yeah. Because what's hotter than making out while you're being shot?
Literally anything else.
Yeah.
Literally anything else is hotter.
By the way, this episode was written by Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, along with 3 other creditors. Jonathan Nolan, of course, wrote Memento.
Yep.
So that little, wait, I've written these notes before, definitely had a Memento feel to it for me.
Yeah, well, and it does. This whole idea of echoes upon echoes.
Yeah.
And Ben mentioned this in Cordkillers, talking about the video game design aspects of it. I cannot shake the feeling that it's like, this is the right time for this show to come along, because it asks we are all guilty of being the guests. I have slaughtered so many hosts in Grand Theft Auto 5.
Sure.
That's all Westworld is Grand Theft Auto 5. So if you're going to point to the Man in Black and say,
you don't even have to use Grand Theft Auto 5. Have you played any shooting game? You may say, well, Grand Theft Auto 5 is a disgusting game. Okay. Have you played ever any shooting game where you shot something like in Mario Brothers? Anything?
Sure. But it really is. It's just a matter of fidelity. The hosts are no more conscious. It could be argued than the characters in Grand Theft Auto. They're just higher fidelity experience.
At least the guests don't treat them like they're any more conscious. Absolutely.
Exactly. And the people running the park and selling the tickets certainly don't act like there's anything else. Another thing we got is a bit more of the mind game Anthony Hopkins is playing when it comes
Oh,
to
yeah.
his new project, and this full-on slavery imagery and the power play that we got when he froze every single body in the park, and she suddenly realizes that she's been played as a suit. Like, no, it's no accident that I'm sitting in the exact same seat that I was when I was a kid. That was fascinating, and it makes me wonder what, all the more what he's up to.
Yeah, there's some theories out there that his timeline is not the same as the rest of the timeline, and that this is him creating the experience that the Man in Black is on. I feel like that's a little convoluted, though. I think it works just as well for this to be the exact same timeline. If this is a new experience that we all need to see, and remember, this is a guy who he likes to create versions of himself. Like I think you nailed it when there was the little boy version of himself when he went out to survey the land. He also is fascinated, and it comes up in this conversation with not being his co-founder. Like, his co-founder got it all wrong, but he knows how to play the game. He knows how to play people like her, and so he has got a more intricate plan in mind. And I feel like it's not a different timeline. That the maze is actually what Arnold put in when he founded the park, and that and as we have seen, you can add to a storyline in progress. I think what we're seeing Anthony Hopkins do is create a new storyline to expand upon that, and he has been planting the seeds of that in the hosts as they have started to wake up.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question, and this is a challenging one for me because I am enjoying the show and I'm definitely all in. I love the world. I love peeling back layers of it. We do have an ensemble cast. It does remind me a lot of Lost, where it's like we have so many different people, we can follow so many different stories, but the real star of the show is the island and the mysteries that lay within. That's what I'm seeing with Westworld. But whereas eventually Lost figured out that you have to have a protagonist, and eventually figured out that it has got to be Jack, I don't get that sense from Westworld. And Justin points out, he says that Westworld has a protagonist problem. Would you agree with that?
I think that was my biggest problem with the pilot. And I feel like we're coalescing around a few protagonists at this point. Dr. Ford, that's Anthony Hopkins' name, is definitely a protagonist. He's not the protagonist yet.
He's barely in it, though. I mean, he is
the force behind all of this. And I think especially after this most recent episode, it's like, okay, this is a struggle between him and the corporation. That is a story. And everything else, he is manipulating other people for his story. But so I say he is a protagonist, but he's not the protagonist. Then you have William, a.k.a. The guy from Always Sunny,
right?
Who's also not named William, because remember at some point his friend Logan calls him something else, and he's like, "Stop! Don't call me William." So he's pretending, and he is a protagonist because he is leading Dolores now. So he's tied up in her story.
Oh, he calls him Billy, which Billy is a familiar nickname for William. So I think.
But then his friend also seems to be the investor that Dr. Ford knew. Remember, he's like, "Oh, you didn't know he's already here, the person on behalf of the board?" And then Logan says to his friend, like, "I'm here because the company wants to invest." He's like, shut up. Let's not talk about that. It's kind of mimicking the Man in Black's conversation.
Well, and he even says later on, he said, "Whoa, we got to up our investment in this."
That's what I'm talking about. That part right there.
Yeah.
And so I think he may be the sleeper agent. So we're starting to coalesce towards a story where it can be Dr. Ford against someone in the park, whether it's Dolores or William, or whatever. But
we're just starting to, the entire chat room is just saying Billy.
Billy. Billy is short for William, Tom. Okay, I get it.
So here's what we're getting. I don't know that we've really reached much of a point of conflict. I don't know what the conflict is. I know that we have I would say the enemy, as best I can understand it now, is the spreading disease created by the reveries the infection that's spreading throughout the corruption, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
which seems to be implanted by Bernard in Dolores, but is just sort of happening in Maeve.
No. It was implanted by Anthony Hopkins, Dr. Ford, because it was Bernard in the very first episode who saw it. He's like, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" And then it's like, "Oh no, I do see that." You're like, "Yeah, that's different." He
but
uploaded
in his
some more code.
conversations with Dolores, he implies that they have a secret themselves. I guess it could just
Correct.
be that
They have
observed
secret
it.
conversations.
Okay,
Is what
I'm not
they
sure
have.
about that.
Yeah. But the important thing is, like, I do understand a few vectors. We have the madam who is onto something, who's into figuring out, sussing out this mystery. We've got Dolores who I don't.
She's now playing the maze, is what we found out with her conversation with Bernard.
Yes, I know. I guess so. I don't know for sure what Bernard wants, and of course they're being deliberate. No, the more I think about it, I don't know what anybody wants. I take everything back.
Man in Black wants to discover the maze.
Correct. That's the only
Dr.
thing I know
Ford
for sure.
wants to complete his project, but we don't know why.
Correct.
Those
or
are
what
the
it
two
is.
clearest motivations. Everybody else has been kind of kept in shadow, but I don't yet feel like it's not that I don't yet feel like they don't have a motivation. I feel like their motivation has been hidden from me. And I'm okay with that as long as the motivation eventually becomes clear.
Now, having said that, I really enjoyed them going out to the outskirts because we've seen the ending of the shootout and the bank robbery. And in fact, on the first or second episode, we saw that dude with the badass leather and the buttons down the front. We saw him get killed by the guy and then take a photo. Like, he stopped the robbery in progress. But it was cool to go back and see the Man in Black intentionally get in the cell with him, to be there at the beginning of that and to realize, oh, that's the same guy, because it goes over and over and over again.
Yeah. Also, it was weird when he plans on exploding the cigars and we see the control room go, we've got a request for 2 incendiaries. I'm like, how does...
Well,
okay, that's interesting.
I assume anytime a guest... I assume it's sort of like, again, if you're playing a video game, when you click triangle to detonate the thing, imagine inside the PlayStation it says, we have a request to do a blah, and then it's like, yes, approved, and then click boom, and but that
implies that
explodes.
a request could potentially be denied at some point.
Well, and I would imagine that would be a matter of course if it would endanger or ruin the experience of another guest, right? So maybe it's like, oh, it looks like that one's a dud, but this other one went off, or that kind of thing.
No, that makes sense. All right. Well, I have to say I am still enjoying this a lot, and I feel like it's plodding and slow, which sounds negative, but in a way it's got this kind of crazy momentum where it doesn't stop for a while and then jump forward. Like, you're always making progress. So it feels like you're not making progress in the story, but then when you look back, you're like, wait, wow, like we've actually covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, there is one character that I'm disappointed that I have not been as delighted with since the first episode, and that is the player piano. That was a great moment when the player piano...
You like the Cure this week?
Is that what it was? I didn't recognize the music is what it was. So that's on me for not noticing the references. I have to go back and find out all the originals of that.
I can't remember if it was IO9 or Entertainment Weekly. Whoever was doing one of their recaps wrote, I hope they do Duran Duran's Planet Earth just to throw off all the people who are speculating that this is happening on another planet.
Amazing.
All right. We are going to spoil episode 1, season 7 of Walking Dead, but Brian hasn't watched it, and you're requesting me to spoil it. Is that right?
Yeah. Specifically, let me just say, my docket is full. I've been on again, off again. Occasionally, I'll have a few drinks and hook up with The Walking Dead, but we're not a serious item. I understand that she's a little bit nutty these days. I just want to hear the gossip of what it was like when you hooked up with her.
All right, man. So started with the right where it left off last year.
I don't know.
That doesn't really help the metaphor, does it?
Yeah.
Abraham and Glenn are the 2 people who die. That is the spoil of this episode.
So Glenn dies?
Yes.
Wow.
The cliffhanger was that Negan, who is the leader of the Saviors, had his baseball bat that's covered in barbed wire and was beating someone up. And we didn't know who. So this episode starts with him beating someone up, but we still don't see who. We just see them fall, and we see him grab Rick and take Rick away. Because mostly what this episode is a breakdown of Rick's character. Negan needs to break Rick so that Rick won't rebel against him. And the way that happens is he starts by eeny, meeny, miny, mo, picking Abraham and killing him.
And Abraham is the redhead with the mustache?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's the big, tall military guy.
Yeah.
Utred wrote in and said, I've been skimming comments and polling friends. Nobody was reminded of biblical Abraham being asked to sacrifice his son as a loyalty fear test with the last-second reprieve. I haven't been looking for religious references in the storyline, but that one bashed me over the head like a vampire bat, especially after Abraham, the character, was sacrificed by the vengeful god, Negan, himself. Could be I've been missing religious references or the show writer borrowed from a really old script. I don't know. The guy's named Abraham. But he doesn't sacrifice himself willingly, although he is the only one sitting up straight, willing to be like not cowering away from the bat. Like people like Rick are just slumped. Michonne is slumped. Abraham is sitting up, almost leaning forward and volunteering, but he doesn't volunteer. He gets selected, and it's not his son, it's him. So it may just be that it's Abraham. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Well, so everybody, the comments that I was seeing on Twitter was that this was particularly brutal, difficult to watch, blah, blah, blah. Was this new territory for television, or is that just people getting caught up in the fact that one of their favorite characters was killed?
Okay, so part of it is how they play it out. We don't find out who's killed until partway through, I want to say 15, 20 minutes in. Because it's all about breaking Rick down, and he keeps they play with you. They show a flash of Michonne in his mind and all of her previous appearances. They show a flash of Glenn and all his previous. They do every character. So at first you're like, oh, it was Michonne, and then oh wait, no, he's just flashing on everybody. Until finally, Negan is playing this game where he takes Rick's axe and he's like, this is my axe now. Throws it out of the trailer window, and he's driven the trailer into the middle of a bunch of walkers, and he's like, go get my axe, Rick, and pushes Rick out into the walkers. And so Rick has to actually like get the axe and defend himself or die amongst the walkers, right? And that's where he starts flashing back to all of these people, and you're wondering, like, is Rick going to pull something out? Is he going to figure it out? Negan starts shooting through the roof at him, saying, you better hurry up and get my axe. And then finally, as Rick is finally pushed to the breaking point by Negan in this test, you see Rick remember the point where Abraham gets killed. And then you see Abraham get hit in the head. You see Abraham kind of swaying, but still alive. And then Abraham says, suck my balls. And those are his dying words as Negan hits him again, and he falls finally to the floor. Then Negan starts bashing the head repeatedly, turning it into pulp. And I think that's what got people, is you don't necessarily see a lot of that, but you see two big hits, you know what's happening, and then you see the aftermath.
And it just keeps on going. Well, it's similar.
Well, hold on, because then after that, you see Rick break, and then you see Rick break somewhat, but Negan's not satisfied, and then you see that Negan then punished Daryl, because Daryl ran at Negan and punched him, by killing Glenn. And then you repeat that same Abraham scene again. You see Glenn get hit. The second time Glenn gets hit, his eyeball almost pops out, and you see that. They had like prosthetic makeup. And you see Negan making fun of him about that. And then it's bash, 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 and you see the pulp on the ground again.
Huh. Glad I didn't watch. Thanks for the report, sir.
Okay, see, because it's the second one that I think pushed a lot of people over the line. It's the first one is hard to watch. The second one is even harder. And then that's not all. Negan drives Rick back, pulls him out, asks them to put a gun against the head of every living member, while Glenn and Abraham are still laying on the floor with obviously pulpy heads, and pulls Carl over, gives Rick the axe, and says, you either cut off Carl's hand or I shoot everyone here.
And so then what happened?
So there's a long struggle. Carl looks at Rick and says, "Just do it, Dad." Like he's the strongest member of the group. Rick picks up the axe, and you can't tell if he's going to have the guts to go through with it. Negan grabs the axe and says, "That's the look I've been waiting for." As he asks Rick if he's going to follow along with what Negan wants to do.
Sure. Right on. So is it good? Did you like it?
I mean, I hated it. I want vengeance on Negan. I love that Maggie's first reaction after they finally leave everyone and say, "Okay, we'll be back in a week to pick up our tribute from Alexandria. You better have it." Maggie's first reaction is, "We're going to fight." She is angry as hell, obviously. I like that it's really following in a lot of the tracks from the book. I'm really glad that they made a point of showing previews and telling people next week's episode will be funny and it will not involve this kind of intensity, because, man, it was a lot.
Interesting. Wow. All right. Well, Walking Dead, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
It's always something with those guys.
Let's lighten things up by talking about Black Mirror.
Oh, dude, actually, let's that first episode was positively adorable. I loved it. Like, I watched it and I was like, "Oh, this is a social commentary. Oh my God, Yelp for people. Isn't this what when there's somebody who was proposing this and everybody hated the idea?" And whether it's Yelp or Uber, the obsession with 5-star ratings and stuff.
Facebook likes,
yeah,
posts,
exactly,
your clout score.
Well, and actually, this has real world ramifications in that China is talking about having your credit rating being associated with your social media score, which would be affected about whether or not you were talking about not dissident stuff that dissident, right? Political dissident, right?
Oh yeah, dissidents. Got it. Yeah,
dissidents with the political parties. I loved it. In fact, I watched it once myself because Bonnie was like, "I don't know that I want to watch Black Mirror." So I watched the first one and I was like, "Oh, that was great." And I saw the second one and I got far enough to realize it was Dan Trachtenberg's episode, playtest. And so I was like, "Bonnie, you want to watch Dan Trachtenberg's episode?" And she's like, "Yeah, I do." Okay. So we watched it, and they did a good enough job on all the horror beats on that Bonnie was left feeling icky. And the way to make it right was like, "Well, watch this other one. This one's cute." And then I went back and rewatched the first one with her. And Bonnie, being somebody who lives, in this, I don't want to say Stepford Wives, but she deals with a lot of moms and a lot of people in social positions who gossip and so on. So to her, watching somebody go completely rogue, punk rock, F the system, she loved it. And I thought it was a great story.
I actually really loved the first 3/4 of that story a lot. I love, this was the Black Mirror universe that I love to live in, where it's like, it's futuristic, but not too futuristic. And you can identify it. And when your wife is sitting there watching it with you and she's on Facebook, you can rib her and go like, "You're doing it right now." And we both enjoyed the hell out of it. And I thought the system that they created, is it Bryce Dallas Howard? Is that the name of the actor?
Yeah,
she was fantastic. I love that the 3.4 brother who lives with her just doesn't care, and that whole part of it was fantastic. I just was let down by the end game, and not even by the very end game, but the part where she climbs over the fence into the wedding. I expected something more, and by saying that, I mean what they did is exactly what I would expect. She climbs in and loses it and insults everyone and doesn't care and gives up on the rating. And I was like, oh, I kind of thought there'd be another twist or another extra bit that I hadn't thought of. I thought it was going to surprise me again, and it didn't. However, I did like the way they brought it home in the jail cells with the two people yelling at each other because there was no repercussion, and you could tell it just felt good.
Well, I'll tell you what it reminded me of is when you read Brave New World and you saw the main character become increasingly isolated when threatened with exile, and then like the last part of the book is like, it's like, oh my God, you're going to go to the island. You're going to be cut off from society or whatever. And then the very last thing you find out is like, yeah, here's what exile looks like. You go and talk philosophy with like-minded individuals. It's really pretty great. And I got that same vibe from the ending of this, which I liked it. It's like, clearly she had this transformation. She came out the other side, the shamanic journey. She went wild and then was rejected by society only to discover that there's another society that awaits her. And in that regard, I thought it was just fine. I liked it a lot.
Now, playtest, I may just be prejudiced because I like Dan Trachtenberg. But of the three, and we weren't going to talk about the third episode, but we did watch the third episode, Eileen and I. Of the three, this is my favorite because it's the balance between a twisted ending for sure, but a really good science fiction-y premise with the play test of the virtual reality, the simulation he's in. And even though I expected it to be, oh, well, he's in the simulation now, I didn't expect it twice. And the way they pulled it off was great. Like, it kept me doubting, even though I knew a twist was probably coming.
Yes. Yes to all of that. Did you catch some of the little winks and nods to gamers in there?
Oh, yeah. No, did you just looking at the Blu-rays on her shelf in her apartment?
Yeah, I definitely went back and paused it and verified, like, oh, yep, I know all these games.
And then, of course, kindly open the door.
Yeah, would you kindly open the door? Like, the moment I heard that, I was like, that was no accident.
I was watching it with my brother-in-law, Sean Hollister, and we both looked at each other like, ha! That's funny.
And that's what it's like, how would you possibly know that unless you played BioShock, by the way? The phrase "would you kindly" is significant in there. If you haven't played it, you should play the
There are nice little
BioShock.
Indy Jones references all over the place, too.
I believe, and the mere fact that I caught the "would you kindly" thing makes me wonder, and I wouldn't put this past Dan Trachtenberg to help make happen. I'll bet there is a bunch of little nods and references and very specific things peppered throughout. I would love to corner him and find out about that. But overall, it looked gorgeous, man. It was amazing. It was an amazing show. I loved the awkward exchange with the language difficulties between our protagonist and the head of the games corporation and stuff. I thought it was great.
Well, I like the way it started as almost like a British drama where the guy's like traveling around the world, getting away from home, and then arrives in England and runs into a lady. And it's like a British drama romance. Then shifts to a sci-fi story with a rich entrepreneur who's holed up in a castle and trying out all of these crazy technologies, and then shifts to a horror movie. And every one of those settings is beat perfect for the genre.
Sure. Well, and even the whole trope of him being in a castle with only a voice in his ear offering guidance is in so many different video games, right? Where it's just like, it's like, hi, I'm the one artificial intelligence who can help you. Go left, go right. Or I'm the one voice who can get you through this.
And Bryce, you're pointing out in the chat room, there are multiple references to previous Black Mirror episodes, too.
Yeah, I know that there are some in the third episode, which I know you haven't seen yet, Brian, or there's a couple like hidden references, especially to like the very first episode and other older episodes.
Sure.
So that's keep an eye out for those too.
I will.
All right. All in all, even though, and I won't say much more, the third episode is the hardest of the three for me to watch so far. These are great. And if you didn't tell me they were on Netflix, if you just gave me all the Black Mirror episodes that have been made to date at once, I would not be able to tell, like, oh, these were obviously made in a different situation. Like, they've definitely maintained the gestalt.
Right on. Third episode. Do watch with Bonnie, don't watch with Bonnie.
Oh,
don't watch with Bonnie. Gonna not watch it without. All right, that's
or have the Mindy Project available immediately afterwards.
I think we have a quorum. Yeah. I think we're done. I think we're all good and we're ready to move on.
Watch 4. Have her watch number 4.
Okay, good. All right, so I'll watch 3. I'll bring her in for 4.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, let's talk about the 4th season of Justified. See, you're not the only one who could do segues, Tom.
Hey.
That's the way you do it, Brian Brushwood. Episode 2 of season 4, a pun. Where's Waldo? Because we're looking for Waldo Truth.
Huzzah!
And they're trying to find him. So where is he? And I think they even say, where's Waldo at some point in this episode. I almost was disappointed that we found out who Waldo Truth was in this episode, even though we don't get to meet him. Although I did like the little switcheroo where we think we found him and it turns out he's not him. And then I thought the mystery was going to last for a little longer. But Waldo is dead and we're now looking for Drew Thompson.
Yeah. Well, number one, I'm excited because Art is one of the most fascinating characters in the whole series to me, and the fact that we're peeling into, it sounds like Art has some kind of tenuous connection to this cold case from 30 years ago. Man, so many different vectors to talk about. Let's start with the tent preacher, right? Don't know what their game is, don't know what they're up to, but I loved Boyd showing up and having that game recognized game thing where it's like, we've already seen Boyd playing this exact role. You know, you can't BS a BSer and all that. And meanwhile, he's challenging him, getting him all riled up, but scanning around, and he figures out that he's like, all right, Sister's the one actually making the calls on all this stuff. I like that. And I like the honesty that Boyd is Boyd and Ava both, where it's just like, hey man, we got ours. And seeing Wynn Duffy show up again was great. Does Wynn Duffy look different this season? I can't tell.
I didn't notice.
He looks a little bit blonder, and man, I don't want to accuse this. Somebody will tell me I'm wrong. I definitely noticed when.
Does it matter?
What?
Does it matter to his character?
No, this is me talking about my experience. But like, I definitely noticed when in Breaking Bad, when one season to another, suddenly Walter White's wife got like 5 years younger because she obviously had some work done.
I never noticed that much either, actually.
I got that vibe from Wynn Duffy from one episode to this one, but I couldn't tell. Might just be a different hairstyle, but he looks different to me. But that's neither here nor there. But I enjoyed the, absent a court of law, when you don't have the government to settle contract disputes, they sort of do this mock trial back and forth, talking about, it's like, well, some might say this is evidence.
I don't have a law degree.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. And I loved it. I loved that interaction, that kind of honor among thieves. And Wynn calling Boyd's bluff and just killing his own man, saying like, hey man, I don't know why he's here. That's not our territory.
Well, and that's why Wynn Duffy felt perfectly consistent to me is not the appearance, but the patter, right? He's like, I don't know why he called me here. Well, then why'd you come? I don't know. I just, look, oh, that's your problem. Here, I've taken care of it. Okay. Are we done now?
Well,
like,
there is a slightly different intensity to Wynn, and he feels more like a higher level leader than we got.
A promotion.
He doesn't feel like a lieutenant. He feels like a player in this game at this point.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. He's got more weight behind him now, and that definitely shows. I also loved the preacher on preacher battle, and I felt like they were going to miss it at first because Boyd just acts the bad guy in his first couple exchanges, and I'm like, come on, man, this is Boyd the preacher, you got to play that card. And then of course he does, and it's brilliant. I'll be honest, the whole Raylan running into the guy at the beginning, and then we don't see him but that one time where he's obviously having a hard time getting money and having to fight for money, and then him coming back to the bar, and it turns out that he's the bartender's husband and Raylan didn't know about it. Like, I'm not sure where that's going to fit. And I'm sure it will.
Well, here's my guess, and this will be fun if you guys have already seen the show to see how wrong I am. The moment he showed up, I figured this is an ex, or this is a former.
See, I just thought he was like a tough sent by Boyd Wynn.
No. Just marching in and pulling himself a beer. That's the kind of thing a brother would do. That's what I thought at first. Like, this is somebody's brother looking out for his little sister. It was a good twist to find out that that's my wife or whatever. Once we started talking about Justified in terms of superhero powers, you've got Raylan is Quicksilver, right? He's just super fast on the draw. That's his superpower. And we had, a gun arm Blondie. That's his superpower. And now we've got this kind of Ben Grimm, the Thing guy coming in, this husband whose superpower is that he's a brawler. He's unbeatable in hand-to-hand combat. I like seeing it through that lens. I suspect we're going to spend a few episodes being trained to think he's a bad guy that we don't like, and then I smell a mid-season team up and on the same page, similar to what we saw with Boyd briefly a while ago.
I could totally see that because obviously Raylan's not going to take a liking to him because he pushes him around and they both want the same girl, or, at least they're both involved with the same girl in one way or another. So
Sure.
Yeah. And then finally, we talked about this a little bit before the show, Brian and I, but the whole bit with Art was confusing as hell. Not that he was the guy on the parachutist case who incorrectly identified the dead body as Drew Thompson and now realizes it's Waldo Truth. That all made perfect sense. What threw me off, and I think it threw you off a little bit too, Brian, was the guy coming in with the Pappy Van Winkle at the beginning, where it's like, yeah, okay, we get it. Like, he's got some influence on Art and Art's deflecting it and whatever. And then Raylan brings it up
right, and then
as a way to be like, don't you question me. What about you? And I had to go look up the plot summary to figure out, like, Art has retirement coming.
Right. So all I got out of that scene was like, well, somebody came and offered some pappy to him, and he got suddenly feisty, and suddenly he's acting like he's having a midlife crisis and wants to go be there to bust people. And it's like, I didn't understand why at all. It did not telegraph at all that this was somebody. Once you said that, looking at online, it's like, oh, he's got retirement coming up. Then all of a sudden I understood, like, oh, that's why the conversation was all about how he just had another birthday and now he's 56 years old and this guy's cozying up, trying to give gifts or whatever. And that would obviously upset, Art, who wants to, feel like he's a young buck forever.
Right. And why he forces himself to go on the call and all of that. That all falls into place. And I know that Art mentioned his retirement coming up previously. But I hadn't been reminded of it lately.
Yeah.
And it sort of slipped my mind there. So there you go. But again, I guess we know that this year's Blondie is going to be Waldo Truth, or Drew Thompson, I guess, at this point, whoever that may be. It has something to do with cocaine and parachuting and a diplomatic pouch.
Agreed. By the way, Ryu Planeswalker in the chat nailed it. If you're into D&D archetypes, Raylan is a ranger. Tiny Gun Sleeve is an assassin. Bar Lady Husband is a fighter. I'm looking forward to a mage and a cleric. Yeah. I'm hoping they're chaotic neutral. I would love to see a breakdown of all of that stuff. I guess Raylan's chaotic good, right?
Yeah, he's chaotic good. Totally chaotic good. He's the poster boy. All right. Thank you all for spoiling along with us. You can find out more about how to be able to watch What You Want When You Want on Cordkillers. And meanwhile, we will spoil you next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.